Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our coverage of the third and final season of Squid Game here on We Know Scripted TV and Nothing But Netflix. My name is Mike Bloom, back yet again to break down the penultimate episode of Squid Game, and we shall pen ourselves a love letter to this episode, to this season, perhaps, as we are just one episode, one podcast away from ending it all, much like the many lives that were ended over the course of this episode, and assumingly will be moving forward. Of course, we are talking about circle, triangle, square, and I am joined by somebody who is never a square when it comes to getting to talk about these types of shows. It is Chappell.
Sweet baby Jesus, not Minsu, not Minsu, not Minsu. Mike, I'm here. I'm not happy, but I'm happy because it was a great episode, and I'm happy to be talking about it with you. So, we have a lot to unpack as we lost a lot of characters, and we're down essentially to our final three in the Squid Game. It's gonna be so much fun to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to unpack, much like a delicious lunchbox that
Ah,
unfortunately, guys, this is the equivalent, Chappelle, of like you get a nice meal packed for you, and then like the bag rips open on the sidewalk and everything goes spilled out. That's what we get in the form of the, very morose ending to this episode, complete with something else spilling out on the ground.
it's almost like if your lunch decided to just jump out of the bag instead. Like, you're not eating meat. Sorry, this is not happening. It just decided to just throw itself out into traffic or something like that. Yeah, I thought the lunchbox strategy was interesting. I thought a lot of the strategy in this episode was interesting. I think we're the perfect two people to break this down and to talk about kind of how we got to this dark ending that we ended by the time we're down to our final three.
All right, Squid Game Know-It-Alls is a go. We are
Yes.
pressing our button on the floor and activating it. So let's get to the final game. We'll be able to get into, obviously, towards the end, as we usually do, as we predicted. Finally, a crossing of the streams in these two paths colliding, along with Noel getting some much deep-seated revenge. But we need to focus, Chappelle, mainly on the last game of this iteration of a Squid Game, which is Sky Squid Game. Though, I mean, it's really Squid Game by name only, as essentially, if we're trying to draw a line to a childhood game, I mean, I don't know, there might be like an authentic Korean game that uses these rules exactly, but for my money, it seems like some version of King of the Hill, or more so
Mhm.
just the game that some of us would do in the 90s when there were no major electronic or technological devices around us, where it's just, hey, just push each other for a while and see what happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of y'all. Only two of you can win. Now go figure it out. Or basically, like, we'll end the game at two, but you have to eliminate somebody in each round prior to that. And we've given you two people who are very obvious targets, and then we're gonna let the rest of this just kind of work itself out. Have fun. I think that this calling this Squid Game is just entitled, like you said, alone. It's the Earth Kingdom version of Squid Game. We put you on this big platform. We're just gonna knock you off however we can, and it was an interesting turn of events. I mean, we kind of predicted a lot of the things that were going to happen just mathematically. If you have to eliminate one person each round, and there's 3 rounds, and we have two obvious choices of who to eliminate, that's going to make this complicated. But then there's also some other questions about who will do the eliminating, what order will they be eliminated in? Can we eliminate more than one person? Is anybody going to get greedy and try to eliminate more than one person? And we answer a lot of those questions here.
All right, well, let's get into maybe more of a beat by beat recap of the final game. I feel like it deserves that much because, again, there was a lot of action to break down, even when it was contained within a set piece. I don't know if I call this a bottle episode, but there was a lot of bottled up aggression and secrets that manifested itself in a Sky Squid Game. Let's start off with the first vote here, and we see this all the time, Chappelle. There's always this easier option of, okay, Gi-hun and the baby are on the bottom. It's so easy. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
get rid of the baby. That's one down, two more to go. We have this alliance of 6, fairly ironclad, coming in here. But here comes like the Natalie Anderson himself, MG Coin, to be like, all right, I'm going to try to work my place within the majority to try to get what I want. And for what it's worth, he is successfully able to convince, the brigade, in a manner of speaking, this Brochacho alliance, to say, okay, I guess if we're going back to Squid Game, the challenge, a bit of the Gombu gang, right?
Mm-hmm.
Manifested in a scripted version to say, okay, listen, they're easy pickings. Plus, if we have to kick one person off each round, if we try to go for the baby, Gi-hun is going to essentially sacrifice himself. And then that's 2 for 1, and we have to get rid of one of our own. So instead, look at Minsu. Look at this little weakling. He's tweaking out. He's having so many Easter egg laden cameos showing up from his mind's eye. We got to go for him. He's easy pickings. And indeed, especially when the poll gets involved, Minsu's pretty much a sitting duck, tragically so.
Yeah, I mean, think about how we got here. Gi-hun had the opportunity to go kill a bunch of these people, right? And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. But he had the opportunity to kind of tilt the odds in their favor by knocking some of these people off, and he refused to do that. I mean, even if he knocked off a couple of them, I think this would have been better. But no, we are down to the point where, okay, we have 3 obvious people at the bottom. Minsu is clearly, he's like one tweak away from just falling off himself. And so they decide this was a democratic process. We took a vote. And I love how they are trying to present this to Gi-hun as if they did not plot this the night before. Oh my God, what if we just I don't know, let's just vote. That's the most fair thing, right? Right? Y'all agree? They're like, yes, oh my God. And then the baby. I mean, the dad's out of the picture, the mother's dead. Meanwhile, the dad is standing right there with ass on his face, like, oh my God. I was like, sir, no one's gonna miss this baby. But how do you pass up on the opportunity to just tap Minsu off the edge? I don't even know if they even just push him as much as they hand him the pole and he falls off. But again, what was Minsu ever going to do? He can barely even focus on the people who are right in front of him. He's hallucinating the whole time. I'm sad to see my boy go here. I really thought in his last seconds he might have some fight, but there was nothing. Once he sees the ghost of Semi, it's the end of the road for Minsu. And now we only have 2 people at the bottom, and you have to figure out how to eliminate them separately so that we don't have to cut into our majority.
Yeah, but what a way to go out. I mean, I loved watching Minsu proceed, if anything, just to see your reaction to Minsu proceeding through these games. But I will say, this guy was in pure agony through his final moments before that agony becomes physical as he's, lying on the ground, bleeding out. This guy has been tormented by Semi. He ends up killing a woman thinking she's Namgyu and then sees the visage of the dead Semi. Even in this moment, he's looking over the edge. He sees Thanos. Thanos and Namgyu are trying to essentially drag him to hell. And so essentially now he gets his sort of Les Mis ending where here comes Semi's ghost to be like, come with me, Minsu. It's okay. You are forgiven. And I felt awful for him as he has the freak out to end all freakouts, a major crash out with these people being like, what did I do? And indeed, we got a lot of the story behind many of these people. And again, certainly the moral depravities that they would dig themselves into for the pursuit of a life-changing amount of money. But Minsu always seemed up until season 3, one of the purer ones, right? He always kind of washed his hands, absolved himself either out of pure cowardice or otherwise from a lot of the incredibly immoral stuff that a lot of these other players got into. And I imagine that one of the reasons why he was haunted by so much, I mean, not to analyze the dreams of it all, even though this is more of a waking dream, but I think he has a lot of guilt that he was living with throughout season 3 for him just being a bystander to Semi's death, that all he did was just smash a bottle next to Namgyu, and all Namgyu did was look up, laugh, and continue to shank Semi to death. So whether or not this is real, to have at least his version of Semi essentially approach him and be like, it's okay, join me on the other side, was maybe one of the more blissful ways that he was inevitably going to go out.
And speaking of blissful, I would say that the show handles this in a way that I thought was very tasteful, because it did look like the ravenous pack of hyenas was about to just turn on him. And we were going to have to watch this man basically get tackled and thrown off the side of the cliff as he was going through his freak out, where instead we got a lot softer ending. He still dies, but it's not in this gruesome, just slaughter that it could have been. And I really thought that's what we're getting. There were definitely moments where we're focused on Minsu, and you see Gi-hun and the baby are kind of out of frame, but it's Minsu versus the pack. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to be so bad. They're about to and this poor man is just going to fall to his death out of fear or something like that. But instead, he kind of, like you said, has this fitting ending where Sami's ghost or memory is the one that is leading him astray. And then even then, he just grabs the pole and falls off. It's not this violent death. The show doesn't handle it like the guy who's going out here saying, I just wanted to be a good person. Like that guy is not just mercilessly like destroyed the way he could have been. So I like that the show really handled it like that, because I thought this was going to be hard to watch for a lot of like for his death specifically, because he was the one with the least plot armor. You know, the baby and Gi-hun were never going down in this episode. It just wasn't happening, at least not without a fight. Whereas with Minsu, it did look like they could potentially just like bully him off of the side of the cliff, and I didn't want to see that. So I liked how the show handled it too.
All right. Well, as we get into the second tower here, where things get noticeably more bloody, as you mentioned, let's rewind a bit to a moment in time that could have been a lot bloodier than it actually was. Let's talk about the follow-up. Apologies for going a bit out of order here, but we gotta get into the Squid Game first off before we flash back here, because I think one of the biggest moments is, again, as you and I predicted for various reasons, Gi-hun does not go through with it. The thing he basically gets closest to is like basically nicking number 100, but that's all the blood that he will let loose in that particular moment. I think the much more interesting thing, Chappell, is that we finally get some perspective as to how Inho won his season. And I'm kind of surprised we didn't talk about this earlier. It's like, where did he get this idea? And suffice it to say, it's because it was an idea that was given to him back when he was a player. We get, a nice cameo from Il Nam in a couple of different ways. Perhaps we'll talk about the freakier variety later on, but essentially he is given the exact same offer when he was in the games, and he ends up going through with it. Unlike Gi-hun, he does indeed slaughter the entire competition, and I guess that was enough of a gesture to not only win him the game, but also in the eyes of Il Nam be like, that's somebody who I think has what it takes to be my successor.
But he kind of cheated. Let's look at this objectively. Everyone has been told that you cannot attack people at this point, except for my son, who I can now give a dagger to and tell to go stab everybody in the night. I don't like that. I don't like it because this whole time I've been looking at Il Nam as somebody who passed the reign to his son, who was the only person who could beat the Squid Game. No, he couldn't beat the Squid Game. In fact, he never even played the last game because he cheated. He killed all of his opponents in the night, and then the next day there was nobody for him to compete against, and so they crowned him. And then he comes back kind of like in this weird nepo baby role. I thought it was better off when I felt like it was earned. And don't get me wrong, it probably takes a lot of metal to go in and murder all these people, even making it to the last round of the Squid Game. This man has some guts. We saw him get very far in the Squid Game twice, so we know he can do it. But the fact that the win was handed to him the first time, Gi-hun didn't need that. He didn't have anybody handed him. Don't get me wrong, he didn't have to win the Squid Game in a traditional sense either, but nobody handed him the game. His dad was not there to pave the way for him and give him a knife. And so I like Gi-hun was able to look at this and say, I'm not doing it this way. And now it's the front man is sitting here thinking, damn, this guy might be better than me, like as a person, but also like at the Squid Game too. I thought I'd put him in an impossible situation, and I gave him the only way out, and he was going to do what I did because that's what people do in this situation. No, you actually have a choice. You don't have to be awful. You could be a good person to whatever extent that looks like. Whatever the boundaries are, you can go to the ends of those boundaries instead of just being like, no, I'm opting out. I'm going to take the easy route. And so we saw Gi-hun make a very different decision than the front man did. And I respect this way more, obviously, but I respect the front man so much less, more. Less. I hate him. It's like the fact that you really folded like this, I don't know, man. It's like Superman was wearing a fat suit.
Well, I think also at the same time, this is like if Jeff Probst retired and the person who replaced him as a host had never made it to a final tribal council, of like, oh, what does the final game look like? Because I would imagine that much like he suggested to Gi-hun, he ended up becoming the winner right there, right then, and won by default. I also want to bring up something that you mentioned just to clarify at this moment. And look, this could be confirmed in tomorrow's finale. I think we want to get into some bold predictions later on. It has not been outright said on the show that Il Nam is Inho's father. I think it's a very popular fan theory. Do you think that's the case, Chappell?
Well, wasn't he going by Young Il in the
Yeah.
So I felt like that was like the nod and wink, and maybe that's why I've been leaning into like this your daddy. But I mean, like you said, it's never been confirmed, but it does make sense now that we see him sitting with him and kind of explaining to him like, here's how you can get out of the game. Because what other motivation would he have to giving him the cheat code here? Now we know that the frontman, his motivation right now with Gi-hun is like, I need to show you that you're wrong, right? I need to show you that you are going to do what I would have done in that situation. And they don't necessarily have any familial bond. So there's a possibility where there was a world where a random guy was trying to teach him a random lesson. But it makes more sense to me if it's his dad.
Yeah, I mean, also on top of that, now it starts to make a bit more sense as to when Gi-hun is ranting and raving in episode 1 of this season, right? About why did you keep me alive? I still think part of it might be the torturous exercise of like, you better suffer on your way out. But it might have been. We see that Inho has done a very good job with this exception of what Gi-hun does as to like thinking 5 moves ahead of everybody. And I think there's a very good chance that the reason why he keeps Gi-hun alive and doesn't kill him alongside Jung-jae is because he wanted to bring him to this particular moment, to bring him. He knew that he was going to get through these next 2 games. He just had confidence in his abilities. He's done it before. And he knew he wanted to get him to this juncture where he said, truly prove that you are no better than me than doing exactly what I did.
Yeah. He thought he didn't have another route. Like Inho took this route because he was like, this is the obvious thing that I have to do, right? Anybody in my situation would just kill all these people and be done with it. But now you find out anybody in your situation would not necessarily do that. There's a person who would do something different. And that automatically goes against everything that he's been working with up until this point. He's been working under the knowledge that eventually you're going to get to a point where you have to do the dastardly thing that I want you to do. And in fact, Gi-hun has said, no, I'm not going to do it like that. And you know, it's funny that the baby is essentially a handicap in the game, but it's also, I guess, one of his greatest weapons too, because knowing that this
I
is
imagine
a
next
numbers
episode
game,
is gonna be swinging the baby over his head.
I mean, listen, it's been helping him out because him holding the baby and latching onto the baby makes him, you know, 2 people instead of 1. And considering they have to get rid of 1 person each round, or there will be a numbers disadvantage that by the end of this, they can't get rid of him and the baby round 1, because then the alliance has to turn on each other. So they have to use him as a meat shield, Mike. You know, in Survivor, this happens, and so yeah, in a weird way, by allowing the baby to remain in the game, he gave Gi-hun this out. Because if the baby had been taken out, had he just said, you know what, we're not doing that. That's ridiculous. This is a child. Take the baby out. We'll put the baby in foster care or whatever, but the game continues. Then Gi-hun has nobody to save him. The entire mob just goes and attacks him essentially in the first round. And he could go out. So I think it makes it like his odds are a lot better now that he has the baby, ironically enough. So I don't know, man. This looks like the front man's grasp on the game is slipping away.
Well, let's get to our second tower here and where the most climactic action is going to happen in this episode. As we'll obviously talk about, again, MG Coin kind of leading the alliance along and manipulating them in a couple ways. But I will give some credit to Gi-hun here, because when things look its most dire, and this guy, I think it's 353, ends up approaching him with the pole, he's able to talk his way off of the ledge, literally, right? He's like, hey, look at them whispering right there. He's able to really drive up that paranoia aspect, as great, you know, strategic contestants do, by saying like, you don't think that they're going to push us both off and then you're at the bottom of the alliance? And he's not asking him to flip, but he's more so having him go back and buy some time by questioning what's going to happen. And it really is just this series of dominoes, you know, from 203 being impetuous and them all saying like, okay, let's wait to start the round until we talk things through, and him being like, nah, it's pretty straightforward, right? Let's just go through with it, roll our way to the end, all split the money, between 353 deciding to back off and, you know, talk to everybody, and between MG Coin seemingly, you know, cracking this idea of sending sort of a sacrificial lamb out with this chain of jackets tied together. Now, look, I don't know if he necessarily knew that Gi-hun was packing and that he would cut the coats to signify that he's not only armed with a baby, but also a knife, and whether or not that contributes to his face turn here as well. But let's talk about that moment. What did you make of MG Coin's inevitable turn back to the quote unquote light side of the force here.
This is a BS turn. Don't trust this man. This man, like from the moment MG Coin does this, like, I'm with you now. I was like, boy, hell no. Nah. Get out of my face. You're not with me. You ain't never cared about this baby. And now all of a sudden you're like, wait, my whole plan, this whole time, I swear. Okay, if that's the case, well, where were you round one? When they had me, when my back was against the wall and they were trying to figure out who was going to put the bell around the cat's neck. You know, they're like I'm over here in the corner holding your baby. I could have failed then. Then what? Then what was your plan? What was you going to do if I just slipped and fell? He had nothing. This man just flipped sides because it looked cool. He's like, okay, perfect time to go with the, like, I'm flipping on my alliance. We're going to knock out a couple pieces from my alliance, and I'm going to flip back Tony Blacho style, okay? Yeah. When it's at the final third, I'm like, look, it's me. It's you. It's the baby. Like, give me the baby. You die. I will raise the child. Like, this will be normal. I don't believe this man. MG Coin, I respect it. I respect the move, honestly, but I don't trust the move. There's no way this man is all in on like, oh yeah, now it's the three of us to the end, because he's willing to do the things that Gi-hun is like not willing to do. And that just goes to show you that there's a reason why he's in here. And a lot of the people who have been in here, we have to remind everyone that they're in here because of MG Coin and his like leading them into these bad trades and these in debt, basically. And so this man is like drawing all these people into the Squid Game and then beating them all at the Squid Game to go win the money and run off with this baby that he probably not gonna take care of. Nope. Boo, tomato. MG Coin is the devil. I don't like him.
Oh, I love that claim. Not the Devil's Plan, though. That's a different Korean show.
No, different game.
Though he'd be great on the Devil's Plan, I think. Like, this is a guy who, talk about like thinking on his feet, like all these ways he's able to be like, no, I have this other idea that we can do instead of killing the baby. Like, I got to commend him there for his adaptability, but I completely agreed. It's so interesting. I didn't even think about this, but looking at how we end this episode, not to jump too far ahead, but like, a lot of the similarities between MG Coin and Songwoo from season 1 are really apparent right now. Not only because this is like the only person standing between Gi-hun and the end of the game, but the fact that Songwoo, again, started off as, we would imagine, sort of like the sidekick of Gi-hun, only for him to show off very early on, like, oh no, he has a much bigger killer instinct. And like, look at this final game. We had 9 people to start off. We are down to 3. With one exception, MG Coin has killed everybody.
All of them. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, don't let the smooth taste fool you. This man is crazy. He killed Minsu. The poor defenseless Minsu just sitting there in the corner. He's just like, I'll do it. I'll take the L here. It just like hits the little weakest one. I was like, okay. Minsu was probably not gonna make it anyway. My boy need at least rehab, to say the least. So boom, I can ignore that. Then by the second time, he like flips sides, and now we're in an all-out brawl. And he goes off and kills one person, and then he goes and he was the one who kills our last little straggler here. The only person he isn't able to kill is the person who Gi-hun ends up fighting, who I'm so glad is dead. But yeah. If we had left this in the hands of MG Coin, like if there's no Gi-hun here, I think the thing alone. I don't think I think this man is going and winning himself. He's not going to have a team of traders or team faithfuls. He will be the last remaining trader in the game regardless. So I don't know. Maybe there's a world where MG Coin is brought back in a future All-Stars. So I would love to see what he looks like when he plays without Gi-hun.
Well, and also when he's a little older, too. Something that I forgot is, like, MG Coin is a pretty young guy, right? I know that 100 is saying, like, oh, look at the brains on this kid, and that's an operative term considering how old that gentleman is. But, like, he does certainly have a lot of smarts on him, especially for someone his age. So, yeah, it is the young lad versus, I suppose, the grizzled veteran in Gi-hun. But, like, watching these guys go out one right after the other, culminating in just the ultimate catharsis in watching 100 try every tactic he's had in the book of like, no, we'll draw lots. Oh no, I'll give you some money. And it finally not working, delightfully so. It does go to show that like the cream kind of rose to the top here in Squid Game, considering that we have these 2 guys remaining that kind of represent like, let's go back to the titular Squid Game, the ultimate form of attack and defense. That MG Coin was somebody that he wasn't needlessly killing, but he was definitely he was eating more than his fair share, right? Because he's like, then I'll
Mhm.
get more food. He was sort of like spending his budget so that he doesn't wind up with a surplus later on and have to lose it. So he's like, sure, I'll kill a bunch of people in hide and seek. Sure, I'll jump over this guy that's hanging from a ledge in jump rope. Yeah, you know what? I am filled with so much rage. I will go after a bunch of these guys, despite the fact that it leaves me in this impossible situation going into the final tower, as opposed to Gi-hun, who, again, with a couple of exceptions, Daeho and now 203, who he stabs to death, has been very much like, no, no, no. The person that's going to lead to your own failure is yourself. I am not going to get in the way of impeding your progress in these games. In fact, I might help you along. And so I think for many reasons, it makes a lot of sense that these are going to be the two left standing as we approach the final episode.
Yeah, and things were going MG Coin's way until Mr. Lunchbox decided I ain't gonna be no Lunchbox no more, because everything was working out perfectly. If they could have had this Lunchbox strategy going into the third round, they would have had very easy sacrificial lamb. I don't even think Gi-hun is going to stand up for the Lunchbox, because Lunchbox was part of the problem as well, right? Like, you kind of got yourself into this mess, sir. You didn't have to align with those people, but also he's like very beat up. Like they tried to beat the life out of him and then just leave him to where it would be merciful to kill him in the third round. Like, it's like, well, we kind of gotta kill him at this point. And so things were working out until Lunchbox decides, nah, I'm good, and takes himself out of the game. And now we're looking at a situation where there is a final three. You have MG Coin, who has sworn, honor bound, that this baby is all that he needs in this game. You have Gi-hun, who has been proving by his actions that he's not going to turn on this baby. So the baby should have immunity at the final three. The baby, everyone's taking the baby to the final two, Mike. But that's the problem. There's only a final two. Somebody has to go, and Gi-hun is holding the baby. So we're going to have some interesting dynamics in the last episode, where I don't know if they just like put the child down and fight it out, or if this is going to be a negotiation where Gi-hun was like, you said you wanted this baby to live a happy life, and it ain't going to be with you. You suck. I saw you. I saw the way you came after the Lunchbox. I saw the look on your face when Lunchbox decided to kill himself. You knew what was up. You have always been on the wrong side of this thing. I can't allow you to take the baby. And June, he wouldn't even want that. Like, trust me, I heard her kind of yelling at you from across the way. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if we're even going to get a fight, or if it's just going to be a conversation that's going to lead to the end of this game. But there's no way all three of them walk away with this alive, unless maybe the game is stopped. Maybe we never even see the end of Squid Game.
Yeah, but listen, if an infiltration across multiple ways ends up stopping the proceedings, that might be the case. I expect it to still continue, though. So a couple things about this ending. I don't know about you, Chappell. I kind of saw the writing on the wall a bit. There was actually this one moment where on the second tower, the 6 guys end up like wrestling over the pole, and I thought there's a chance that like if someone just pushes them over, they all die at once. And then we get the ultimate sort of like Twilight Zone ironic ending of MG Coin, Gi-hun, and the baby. One of them has to die in order for the other two to survive. I didn't expect it certainly to happen in the way that it did, especially with the death of the Lunchbox. It was very akin, Chappell, to like in Winners at War when Ben Driebergen's like, I'm going to get taken to the end as a goat and no one's going to vote for me. I'm just going to remove myself from the equation right now to prevent that outcome. Take me out right now. It was a controversial move at the time, certainly controversial here. So yeah, let's talk about what is going to happen in this last game. Let's assume that the game is going to continue fair and square, even though I believe they are on the circle platform to finish, and see who is going to be the loser out of these final 3. I, despite the fact that I drafted this guy, think it's going to be MG Coin who sacrifices himself. Because I think about also what Gi-hun discloses to Junho a couple episodes back. And something we should also mention is the fact that, like, unlike the Songwoo comparison, these two guys barely know each other, right? Like, MG Coin reveals that he is the father, and Gi-hun's like, who are you? And yeah, I guess we needed a reminder that like all of these guys have no idea who this guy is outside of his, public profile. They don't know that he's been playing the game with his ex. Gi-hun's been caught up in his own business that he doesn't necessarily know. MG Coin was also like kind of part of the alliance, but kind of operating outside of it because he was more so kind of like a side alliance with Junho over anything when it came to Team X. That like, you know, Gi-hun has a certain look when he remembers the two of them talking at jump rope, being like, okay, I guess I believe your story at this point that you're the father. But I think an argument that Gi-hun could make would be like, listen, take it from me, an absentee father. Like, I know how shitty of a dad you can be. If you want this child to live a good life, you need to commit yourself to her fully. I am also someone who has won the game before. I wanted to win it partially for my daughter, and I realized that was a hell of a lot of toothpaste you cannot put back in the tube. It is something that will haunt you until your dying day. This is not something that you want. You think you might want it. You think you might want all of this billions of won. You know what I spent it on? Buying a hotel and turning it into a gun range to get my revenge. Money does not buy you happiness, sir. And I don't know, like MG Coin, we were talking about this sort of like redemption arc from him after the past couple episodes. I guess we got a version of it in this episode when he decides to tell the truth and make this turn to help protect Gi-hun and the baby. But I still think if I'm going with what is the most likely outcome, that MG Coin is convinced for one reason or another that indeed the juice was not worth the squeeze and that the best thing to do would be for Gi-hun to take care of the child instead of him.
Okay, I hear you, but I don't really like it. I don't like it because I think to me, the version of MG Coin I've been watching is somebody who is way too dastardly to let someone talk them down. You know, like I've never trusted this man. Every time it seems like you should trust him, there's always a reason why you shouldn't. Even Junho in the last seconds are like, no, you can't raise my baby. Like, you know, like she's like, I'm not gonna make it, but I'd be damned if the baby is raised by you. So to me, it doesn't feel like someone we could trust to make the adult decision. Like if we're asking if people are good or bad, I just think he's bad. So I don't think he's going to do that. Now, I do think he will try to lead us to believe he's going to do that. But I think he's going to do like a sweep the leg type. You know, he might pocket sand his way. I try to you know, kind of like Venus and Aris, you know, on the mat, you know, where it looks like I'm about to take a dive, and then he's going to try one last time to potentially win. And I think he's going to try to push Gi-hun off while Gi-hun has the baby. I think he's going to break all the way bad, and we're going to be like, this guy sucks. Because I just don't trust him. And so then Gi-hun obviously is going to get the upper hand. I don't think MG Coin is surviving this, but I don't think he's going to go out in a graceful, noble way. I think that in his last breath, he is still going to be scum.
I wonder, from a rules perspective, let's say MG Coin gets pushed while holding the baby. I would imagine that he would break the fall considerably so. Like
the baby?
MG Coin. Does the baby, if the baby's alive at the bottom of the pit, does the baby still win? You know?
Will he die holding when he falls to death holding the baby? The baby basically is like saved by the fact that he landed on his father's corpse. Mike, you're dark. This is dark, Mike, even for you. This is crazy. Let me out. Let me out of here. Rob, come back. You left me with my Bloomy. Scary.
Exactly. I'm just writing these dark, depraved endings for everybody.
That would be crazy. It's like the egg drop. You know, it's like you wrap the baby in something. And you just
that's exactly it.
No, that's the last childhood game we have to play, Mike. The egg drop.
Exactly. And turn to science experiments for a hot second. I mean, I think you and I are both sort of in the same boat, though, much like Junho and the mercenary here, that we think Gi-hun's going to survive, right?
Yeah. And the baby. The baby's going to make it. The baby. Squid Game has had the opportunity to do some really dark stuff. And the show has taken, like I said, a little bit more graceful route with some of the characters. They haven't had the gruesome deaths that we've seen for some of the not so loved characters, right? So like Junho, she had her ankle thing, but she like sacrificed herself. But we didn't see her like dive off into her death. We kind of get a cutaway. You know, the show has been very tactful with the way they kill off some of the faves. Even in this episode with Minsu, you know, he goes off kind of like in this like dreamlike state. So I don't see them killing a baby. I just don't. Yeah. Even though they kill everybody else, I just don't see the show taking that route. It just doesn't feel like that kind of show anymore. Yeah. But that said, the baby is surviving. I just don't see a world where Gi-hun is going to let MG Coin be the one to raise the baby. It's just no.
Yeah. I will also say, speaking of flashbacks and ghosts of characters, nice appearance from Sabiak, who, for those
Right.
who remember, was, one of the final three members. Despite violence not being allowed in this iteration of the Squid Game, certainly was not the last time out, as Sungwoo ends up killing her overnight because of the injuries that she sustained. But it was a nice, again, moral reckoning for Gi-hun to be like, yeah, you're not like this. Remember when you faced this overnight? I was trying to remember if actually this is the exact dialogue that she told him, because I remember like they had the big dinner and he had the steak knife and he was brandishing it and he was ready to kill Sung-woo while he was sleeping. And Sabyok's like, no, don't go through with it. I wonder if it was that scene directly. And I think in many ways, Ki-hun's feeling a lot of echoes from his previous time out in the current version.
Do you think that was earned though? Yeah, like this whole season, we haven't really gotten any echoes from season 1 like that. And all of a sudden, Sabyok's like, "Hey, remember me?" I was like, "Not really."
Honestly, I mean, that's a final season of a show in a nutshell, Chappell, right? It's just like all the callbacks to all the characters. I am surprised, and maybe we'll actually see the ghost of Sung-woo next episode. Right. He's sort of like the lone holdout. We got Sabyok and we got even Il-nam in this episode, but Sung-woo is the one that's been missing.
Yeah, when Sabyok popped up, I was like, "Oh, okay," and then I was just like, dang. Also, now he's starting to think of season 1. Like the rest of us have moved so far away from that. But yeah, you're right. We got Il-nam as well. So yeah, I just don't see how you could do this final battle without a callback to the first final battle with Sung-woo. So that's going to be fun. But yeah, it was good to see her. He did need something to shift him back into like his human form, because I think he was in game mode, he was in survival mode, and he just needed something to humanize him a little bit more. And so that was kind of happening, and it was happening with the backdrop of us getting the flashbacks of the front man when he was faced with these same dilemmas, when he was like, I'm gonna kill all these people, like there's no Sabyok to save them. So yeah, him watching on as Gi-hun made these decisions, I couldn't tell if it was like disappointment or just general curiosity about like, that's an interesting thing that you're doing.
Yeah, the caption said breath trembling, and I don't know if it was like him experiencing PTSD like we were sort of going through in real time, being like, I remember when I was in that tuxedo and I had a freak out upon doing what I felt like I needed to do, or whether it was him being like, oh my God, he actually didn't go through with it. But yeah. Speaking of Sabyok, let's talk about the adventures of another wily North Korean woman. Let's talk about Noel coming back for revenge, but also to, expunge the records of 246. Of course, one of the reasons why she turns around is because this, black suited officer calls her and is like, oh yeah, by the way, I know you made off with one of the players and we have all this information about him. This is something we even brought up last episode. It seems like if she wipes all of the electronic and physical records of this man, then they will not find him. And so it's going to cause her to go like full John McClane, essentially, complete with going through the air vents to take care of this, I will say once again, stupid man. He got caught monologuing, Chappell. He's like, aha, you're crawling away towards the elevator. I don't know why you would do that. It's not like a fully loaded machine gun was left in there from our previous brawl. So I'm just going to wait and marinate in this. And it turns out that he was the one to get roasted.
The moment I saw him drinking like the whiskey or whatever, I was like, oh yeah, he's done. He's done. Because it's like he's about to do the thing. He's about to really bask in his glory. And of course, that's what he did. Yeah, they have this good fight. He beats her ass. Like, I mean, he beat the hell out of her. And he could have just killed her. But like, he gets a phone call like, what? Oh, yeah, nothing. Just in here killing this girl. Okay. Yeah, no, it's fine. I'll be back. And then as she's crawling off, he's just playing with his food. He turns around. She's like slowly trying to get away. He's like, you fool. You can't use the elevator. Then we get the gun. And I was like, she got him. I was very hyped. It was a good moment for me. Very happy that she killed this man. But this all brought a lot of questions to the surface. For one, why does she care so much? Why does she care so much about this man that she worked with and this baby that this man has, this daughter that he have? He says, you had a crush on him or something, but y'all like each other? Why are you doing all of this? Mike, is this his girl's child?
No, I think it's what the officer ends up really underlining during their many conversations, which is like, as you remember, Noel, when she left North Korea, left her child behind. We see a picture of that in the first episode we see. And so I think he's very much speaking the quiet part out loud, which is like, you're projecting forward the fact that you want to try to save this kid because you couldn't save yours. And maybe Noel's like, no, damn it, I like subtext better. I've got to kill you. But that's honestly what I think it comes down to. I don't think it has anything to do with like family ties or anything. I think it was just that she saw this parent and this child in a really, terrible state of affairs and is like, I couldn't fix things for myself, so I'll try to fix things for him. What I thought was really interesting was that we got a little bit of information into the recruitment process. Obviously, the first time we're introduced to Noel, there's this really awesome twist where, the entire episode, we think that she's being recruited for the games, when it turns out that no, she's actually has been recruited to be a soldier. And it was apparently due to this officer that he is also a North Korean refugee, that he also lost a child. And it's like, I see something in you. I'm not going to put you in the games like the rest of these people, guarantee you a chance basically at death. I'm going to put you behind the scenes because I think you have what it takes to get the job done. And I think he was right about that. It's just that the job that she's doing is not necessarily the one that the description called for.
Yeah. He even mentioned something about, like, I guess he ended up in a situation because all he needed was an organ, right? He was like, all I needed was a kidney. And there was a moment where he stabs her. He's like, and now I'm surrounded by kidneys. Isn't this great? So we do get a little bit of his backstory too. But yeah, the interplay between them seems way more personal now. He's like, I brought you here. I thought I knew you better than everybody else here. And I was like, how? How do y'all know? Do they know each other? But it just seems like, no, he just got very familiar with her file and with her life, and has, after speaking with her, realized that they have a lot in common. And he just wasn't expecting her to go rogue like this. But yeah, I guess he just underestimated this lady, because not only does she go rogue, but she's like has the ability to, scale the side of the building, to fight him, to, get the gun. Like, this lady is on a mission. I don't know if he could have ever suspected that she would have put so much stock into a random or seemingly random like player in this game. She worked with him at a theme park. He probably thought, that's a no-brainer. I've seen her kill a bunch of people since this game has started. Why this guy? Why, of all the people, this is the hill that you're willing to die on? And she has risked her life for him time and time again. So very interesting to see her acting like this throughout this episode. And it's leading me to wonder what happens next.
Yeah, that's the question of the hour and change here, because Noel is able to make her way to where we saw Junho go in the first season, right? Which is this sort of like file room that has records on everybody. I believe this is where Junho ends up discovering that his brother was a previous winner of the Squid Game before it ends up getting revealed that his brother is also the front man. So she's down there, but also she is not fatally stabbed, but like bleeding out a considerable amount. And listen, this woman is tough, to your point, Chappell. But was this a one-way mission? Do you think that she is going to either get caught and go out in a blaze of glory, or like not be able to get to whoever would rescue her in time, and so she will indeed die on this island?
I could kind of see it. Yeah, as a character, she kind of lives in this gray area, right, where she's doing a lot of heroic thing, but she's clearly on the villain tribe. And so because of that, I'm like, she's still not a good guy, right? So I'm not actually rooting for her to make it out, because I watched her murder innocent people, or at least people within the game. She signed up for that, to be this enforcer, this person who will go in and clean house whenever these people break the rules or whatever. She is just as bad as everybody else who works for Squid Game Incorporated. So for me, I'm not really a fan of her making it out and living happily ever after because she saved one guy. And but it's a noble thing that she's doing. So I see her death probably coming, but I don't know if it's, where she's like murdered, or this is just the end of the row. Like, I don't know if this is a fitting end for a character who's been such a big deal. I feel like we need one more big final moment to really say goodbye to her, as opposed to her just kind of like dying in the hallway.
Well, that final gesture might come in the form of some help coming her way to the island, as indeed we do see that 246 gets stranded at sea. The pink suits eventually catch up. His motor gets shot out. He is dead in the water until a foghorn sounds, and it turns out that, yeah, I guess Junho does know how to drive a boat, or at least enough to get to the island. So I imagine, Chappell, what is going to occur next episode is that, these two parties are going to meet. I don't think 246 necessarily wants to be like, sure, I'll join you on the way there.
No.
What I think happens is Junho makes his own one-way trip. He's like, okay, listen, I'll go take me to the island, or he'll hop in, the speedboat of the dead pink suits and be like, I'm going to make my way back to the island. Mercenary, you take 246 back to the mainland. This is where I leave you. I mean, we start the episode with this very fateful conversation between the two brothers. We need to have another meetup between the two of them in the finale.
He even calls him. Junho gets a call from his brother, and he's like, hey, this is the front man. You need to give up. It's like, wait, what? Sir, do you understand how long I've been looking to shut this operation down? You just call me like it's normal? Like this, sir? He's like, why didn't you just let me die? Like, why are we here? He's like, well, if you don't stop looking for the games, you will die. He's like, well, I guess that's where we are right now. So yeah, those two are on a collision course. I think 246 has made it out. I think he's done. I think this is the end of the road for him. He's about to go off and live into sunset. We might get some type of kind of post-credit scene or whatever where we see him link up with his kid or something like that. But as far as 246 is done, he's done. I think now we are really trying to determine what happens when Junho and Inho finally reunite. What I would assume would be one last battle. But Mike, why would his one last battle be with his brother when Gi-hun still has some beef with the brother too? Like, I don't know who's we're looking at a final three right now with the baby and MG Coin and Gi-hun. But isn't the real final three like Junho, Inho, and Gi-hun? Like, isn't that what a real beef is? I don't know what we're gonna do. Gi-hun has to go and win the Squid Game and then has to join whatever this skirmish is, because although I would love to see the brothers go at it, I still think Gi-hun's beef is a lot bigger than we can ignore, at least when it comes to Gi-hun versus the front man.
That's a really good point that I think you look at. Obviously, a lot of turnover between iterations of Squid Game here, but like the three mainstays have been Gi-hun, Inho, and Junho. It feels like we have to have some sort of version of a showdown, at least between Gi-hun and Inho, whether it is just another sit down where like after Gi-hun wins, he like has a meeting with him again and is basically like, ha, screw you, I've proven you wrong. And Inho's like, have you? Look at the amount of bodies that are in your wake. Maybe it is that Inho and Junho face off. Junho tragically dies at his brother's hands after his brother spares him the first time. And now Gi-hun's like, all right, you're the next one I have to face off with, almost like anime style. I'm not entirely sure, but I do agree with you that I feel like, and we'll get into maybe some bold predictions for the finale next up here. I don't know, I feel like leaving a lot of won on the table if we did not have some sort of final conversation and or skirmish between Inho and Gi-hun, the two previous winners of Squid Game.
Yeah, but then it's like, then what is Junho going to do? I feel like he's going to.
What has Junho done this entire season?
But that's the thing, Mike. Well, we spent so much time with him that we have to get something from Junho getting to the island. Is it just like, all right, Gi-hun beat you up, you're under arrest? No.
I got it. This is exactly what's going to happen. After Gi-hun wins, he is going to brawl with Inho. Gi-hun is about to be like, stabbed fatally in the eye. Inho is not afraid to take his life. Bang! Inho's chest explodes, blood pooling around his black robes. His brother killed him. He did not miss the shot.
Okay. I'll take that. I'll take that, because they just to you and I, we've talked about this. The stuff off the island really was dragging for a long time. Just like it's going around in circles with Captain Park, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't moving the plot like we would have liked. In this season, it did a lot better. We were very much moving toward a goal. But the goal has always been to get Junho to the island so that he could essentially shut down the Squid Game. I feel like he's going to be a little too late to stop this particular run of Squid Game from happening. And maybe he'll show up just in time to, obviously, if the front man is dead, whether it's he has to kill the front man, which I think it has to be him. He has to confront his brother at some point, or it doesn't make sense. But then from there, he can start to dismantle whatever this is. Because as we were told, if the front man dies, there's just another person who's up next. But we've yet to see who that person would be. It feels like Gi-hun was kind of getting groomed to be next, kind of like in the same way we saw the front man getting groomed, where he was telling him like, you go kill all these people at night, you'll win. And then boom, somehow he ended up in charge. Was Gi-hun next by design? Like, was he supposed to be in charge next? And what does that look like now that he's now probably won twice? Gi-hun DS Twine, and then you have Junho, who is now incentivized to shut it all down.
All right. Well, let's get into. I would say we have, our survival draft still going into the finale, but I want to further the stakes here because we're gambling
Ooh.
men and make one more bold prediction. And I'm going back on what we just spent the better part of almost an hour talking about here. And I will issue one of my bold predictions for the finale. If you talk about who is the next to sit on the Iron Throne, like Squid Game has to keep turning here. Yes, maybe there's a thing where they do break the wheel and shut it all down and it's done and dusted, but like there could be a version where, like Scott becomes Dr. Evil at the end of Austin Powers and Goldmember. There is another. And I was thinking about, okay, who is diabolical and bloodthirsty enough to not only have what it takes to watch hundreds of people die, but also have the maniacal brain to think through all the creative ways it could happen. If MG Coin somehow survives, I think he becomes the new frontman of Squid Game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you're right. I don't see a world where he survives the Squid Game, but let's say Junho gets there early, and he's able to stop this fight mid skirmish because he's seeing a man with a baby fighting another man. And he's like, what the hell are we doing here? Like cut the cameras, dead ass, like everything's shut down. Yeah, I think that in that sense, we could get Junho potentially arresting the front man or whatever. Gi-hun and MG Coin walking away. MG Coin being like, me and my baby will be fine. No worries. I've turned over a new leaf. And then by the end of this thing, him going to the VIPs and being like, what? Like, I got all this money.
Doing some crypto, folks.
Right, exactly. And then, we were told that this might be the end of Squid Game. But I think if you do that, you do leave the opportunity to pick more money off of the table, as you would say. And so, Netflix is not, known for passing up the bag when it comes to stuff like Squid Game. We like to milk this stuff until it is dry. And this is the final season of this iteration of Squid Game, but who knows? Squid Game Next Generation or whatever might be coming if we leave somebody like MG Coin alive and in charge of it. So I do think he's number one if we're going to try to keep this thing going. Number two would be the baby.
All right, Chappell, give me one bold prediction, either, part of what we talked about in this podcast or maybe outside of it, that you think is going to happen in tomorrow's finale.
I really want MG Coin dead, but I do like what you said. I want to predict that MG Coin is going to die in the Squid Game, and he is not going to sacrifice himself. Gi-hun is going to have to murder that man because he's crazy. That's my prediction.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, so again, really putting a big asterisk on, like, you won, but at what cost,
Yeah.
I guess the baby is supposed to be proof positive of Ki-hun's concept of, like, look, this is, a new as you said, generation, a new sense of humanity that was born within these, devilish games, and I have been able to save it. What does that say about your games? But like, it also maybe is this idea of like him sort of taking on the arrows, right? Not literally, but like the sins of what the game provides so that this innocent child can live safely. So I like that.
Yeah, I can't. To me, I think it's out of MG Coin's character to be sacrificial. I just don't think that that's him. I think that when given the opportunity to do that, his reaction when he saw Junhee's ankle was like, "Oof, girl, I don't know how you're gonna make it." Like, it wasn't like, "All right, how are we gonna get through this?" Because Gi-hun knew about the ankle, right?
Mm-hmm.
He knew about the ankle and the baby, and he still said, "I'm going to get you across that bridge, no matter what." That is not MG Coin's reaction when he saw that baby. He's like, "Oh. Well, damn, that's tough. What you about to do?" So I just don't see him now deciding to be a good father or a sacrificial or whatever. I think that for him, he's going to try to do whatever it takes to win this game, if with or without that baby. And I think that is going to be his downfall.
Well, tomorrow we shall see the downfall. Who falls down off the tower?
Oh, God.
Who wins the final game if the games are not stopped? Is Noel going to stop the proceedings? Is Junho going to stop the proceedings? And who will survive through to the final minutes of Squid Game? We shall see. I cannot believe we are here, Chappell, but tomorrow we will talk all about the final episode of this series. And the only thing we have to keep us company after that will be these odd wax figures of Ilnam, both in and out of costume, that were just apparently hanging up in a hallway somewhere.
I do like the mask though. The bunny
The mask was awesome. Yeah, with no
That's
offense
so
to
cool.
Inho, he has a pretty badass mask, but like I kind of love the bedazzled rabbit mask.
That's the best mask. I'm not a Halloween guy necessarily, but if I was going to have a Halloween costume, I gotta find that mask.
All right. Well, we shall see what tricks and treats are available for us tomorrow. Join us, won't you? Only one episode left. You all can watch it right now and see how right or wrong we
have
were.
no
And
clue.
so tune in tomorrow and laugh at us, laugh with us, cry with us, perhaps, as we will give a fond farewell to Squid Game with the season 3 finale. Thank you all, as always, so much for listening. Until tomorrow, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.